And we're back for the 100th time. Greetings everyone, this is Lucian Vâlsan broadcasting from Cluj-Napoca, Transylvania. As always, alongside with me is Herr Jon Gunnarsson broadcasting from Deutschland, and our producer James Huff broadcasting from the US, making sure everything is working just fine. Greetings, Mr. Gunnarsson.
Hello, for the 100th time. I mean, not exactly for me, but for you. So how's it going for you?
It's going fine, although I'm a bit disappointed of the YouTube technology because I was considering making a small audio file with the clips from the first episode that was 2 years and a half ago, and also, you know, the best moments with the jokes from Huff and things like that. Sadly, YouTube is completely unfriendly for that, so maybe, just maybe, I'll consider making such a video and put it on my channel in the days to come. So because of that, we're not going to have anything special or flashy, except for the fact that we're going to overemphasize the silly place, because, well, the news section has quite a few elements of the silly place, and the last element, which is our topic, is also pretty much around the silly place. So yeah,
there was even an especially silly news piece from Germany that I omitted because I didn't feel like translating it, because my social justice speak translating skills are not up to par for that. So
yeah, I have.
It's too silly. I didn't even understand it myself.
Yeah, I have this problem myself when I encounter articles from Sweden. There's sometimes they're just so complicated to translate because some of them aren't exactly in Swedish, but rather in something that resembles Swedish, but is not exactly Swedish. So yeah, I can totally understand that. Anyway, so and about the weather, it's extremely hot. Whilst at the late August it was cold as hell, now there's still 26 degrees, although it's 9 p.m. in this part of Europe. So yeah, must be that global warming again.
Yeah, I mean, here it is rather cool, but it's okay.
Yep. Okay, then with that being said, let's start with this first piece of news, which is, of course, from the silly place, coming from the National Review. Beware, putting your arm around your girlfriend is sexist. English actress Helen Mirren has declared that a man's putting his arm around his girlfriend is sexist, despite the fact that she was photographed with her husband's arm around her just one day before making this comment. It annoys me when I see men with an arm slung around their girlfriend's shoulder, Mirren said in an interview with the Daily Mail on Sunday. It's like ownership. Wow, and here I'd been thinking that cuddling was nice and sweet. How foolish of me. Of course, when you're young, you want the guy to take your hand and look after you, she continued. But when I see girls being leaned on, I want to say, tell him to get his damned arm off your shoulder. Yes, if you're a girl and have your boyfriend's arm around your shoulder, Mirren wants you to tell him to stop it, even if you seem to be enjoying yourself, because she knows better than you do what's right for your relationship. How feminist. What's particularly interesting about this is that there are several photos of Mirren and her husband, director Taylor Hackford, at the Toronto Film Festival on Saturday, in which he, trigger warning, has his arm around her. You may be tempted to think that this seems hypocritical, but I'm not going to judge. Maybe she was just too afraid to say anything because, as we all know, the power of the patriarchy often prevents women from speaking. Yeah, that must be it. After all, the affection displayed in these pictures does look pretty traumatizing. The reporting style is entirely appropriate. I mean, at first I was thinking to include the segment from the Daily Mail with the interview, but then I thought, nah, this one's better. What makes these people think that they have the right to dictate on everyone how their relationships should follow? I mean, if she finds this traumatizing, I wonder what Miss Mirren thinks about relationships based on BDSM.
Yeah, I have no idea.
I mean, really? Or is BDSM also anti-feminist?
Not as long as it's femdom, then it's okay.
Not as long as what?
as it's femdom.
Ah.
That is, the woman is.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, that makes sense.
That is totally fine and feminist and whatever, but anything else is of course oppressive.
I see. Well, when the discussion about feminist porn was in headlines, I think it was in late 2013, I was considering pirating some so-called feminist porn to see what exactly makes feminist porn different. And to my total amazement, no torrent was available with feminist porn. Nobody wanted to pirate that shit. And the reason I'm bringing that up is because I'm thinking, I'm considering whether there is feminist porn with BDSM and trying to confirm your theory with femdom. But seriously, putting your hand around your girlfriend's shoulders is ownership and oppressive.
Feminist porn can take a 45-minute clip and turn it into 3 hours because every single action requires a yes. Especially if it's made in the state of California.
Yeah, where it needs enthusiastic consent. Now, everything that I can think
it'd almost be like listening to that owl trying to get to the middle of a Tootsie Roll Tootsie Pop. A 1. May I have another? A 2. May I have another? A 3.
I'm thinking, how do you convert dirty 1970s German porn into feminist porn? Yeah. Well, maybe the next article can explain to us a bit more about that enthusiastic consent, if I'm understanding the title correctly.
Not really. So this one is from the Ostsee Zeitung from Germany. 8 in 10 rape accusations are false. Whether it's rape, abuse, exhibitionism, or child pornography, the Criminal Police Department, or KPI, of Rostock has recorded 173 crimes against sexual self-determination this year. In 2014, that number was 262. More than 80% of these cases have been solved, according to the police. Chief Criminal Detective Britta Rabe has been working on sex crimes since 2007 in Rostock and environs, together with 3 colleagues. But more and more often, they encounter fake cases. 8 out of 10 sex crimes are false accusations. Quote, "We take these reports very seriously," Peter Meinker, chief of KPI, emphasizes. A great many officers search for suspected perpetrators. Many witnesses are questioned and evidence is laboriously collected at the crime scene, he says. In spite of this, the officers often discover that in reality there had never been a crime. Quote, "Often these women lie to protect themselves, to justify a mistake to their husband, boyfriend, or parents," Britta Rabe says. So
80%?
That seems extremely high. I mean, we're talking about something like 250 cases per year, and it's in this particular city, and it's in Vâlsan, so it's perfectly possible that the sort of real average rate is much lower, but just by happenstance there's this one city where it's actually much higher, so that's a possibility, and it just gets reported because it's so unusual, and all the other cities where it's much lower don't get reported. So that would be one theory I could come up with, which would be sort of in line with the number being maybe 30% or 50% or something like that, or but certainly not in line with the sort of 2% number that we sometimes hear.
Yeah.
Or it may be the the report sort of exaggerates this. Maybe it's just one person's opinion or whatever. So I don't know, because the number seems, suspiciously high. That's I really can't possibly imagine that this is sort of a typical number.
Well, then again, or maybe it's just 1 year. It was a bit more different than the statistical norm. I mean, if it's 250 cases, that would mean 200 of them are bullshit. 200 lies in a year in a larger city just in 1 year as a deviance from the statistical norm doesn't sound that unexpected or unbelievable.
Yeah, but it's interesting because it just really does not fit into the standard narrative of the 2% or whatever it is, or even it doesn't even fit in with the 8%. That would still be a really unlikely occurrence if the sort of real average rate is 8%. But if it's like 30% or 50% or whatever, then that's it's perfectly possible that you get 80% in some particular place.
Yes, well, the problem is that with the number of the rate, of false rape allegations is quite impossible to calculate unless you take. I mean, there's a huge amount of data, and you have to take them by police station and then compile all of them and find a reasonable definition on which of them are false. And that would calculate the number of false complaints, but not necessarily the rate, because there's obviously cases that don't get reported, although I don't believe, although again, that's an information that we don't know because we don't know how many don't get reported. I don't believe the feminist theory that 90% don't get reported, but definitely there are cases that don't get reported.
Yeah, but I mean, I guess it is reported accusation they're talking about here, so that wouldn't really apply to that 80% number. Also, that's sort of another thing that makes me a bit skeptical of this piece of news, or very skeptical, really. That how do they know that 8 and 10 are false? They say that 80% of these cases are resolved, and presumably about the other 20% they don't know anything.
And probably from those resolved, 80% of them end up being resolved in a non-case.
Yeah, but there's still sort of this. I mean, there's cases where you can sort of clearly say that the accusation is true, or cases where you can clearly say that it's false. But there's also got to be lots of cases that are sort of in the middle, where you're not really sure, and there's not sort of convincing evidence, but there's also not evidence or convincing evidence that that the accusation was false. So it really depends on how you classify those cases. So it's really a sort of an unknowable number. So I was very skeptical whenever someone says, the rate of false accusations is X%, whatever that X is.
Yeah, the only report in this regard that I've seen was from India that was convincing, where it was by a lab that was testing, that was doing DNA tests, and they found that half of them definitely did not match the claims of the victim. And in that case, I can definitely believe, because, well, DNA tends to not lie.
Yeah, I mean that's really interesting, because that would sort of put a lower bound on the false accusation rate of 50%, at least in India.
Yeah, it was tested in a study made by I think it was Bangalore Commission of Women or something like that. It was a feminist think tank that commissioned the study.
That is really interesting.
Yeah, and the link is now blocked on Facebook. You can't post it without going through 2 or 3 different security checks, because it was flagged as offensive by so many people. It's on Times of India. Just Google Times of India false allegations and you'll find it. Well, I'll find the link and put it in the chat room. But yeah, go ahead.
Of course, that 50% would then be a lower bound estimate, because there's still, of course, many cases where sex did in fact occur, but it was consensual. So they're really
Yes.
only ruling out the cases where the particular person just didn't even have sex with
Yes.
another person.
Yes. Yes, that's true. But then again, given that India has a lot of laws to incentivize false allegations, I have to admit that I'm not entirely surprised. I mean, your entire family, you and your entire family can be arrested um, if the wife says that you raped her or something like that and accuses you under their special uh, criminal code 498A, I think is the section that criminalizes rape under the rape and marital rape and something else. There's something dowry something. So yeah, they have quite a lot of statutes like this that incentivize false allegations essentially.
Yeah, it seems to be my impression that this sort of thing has increased with all these new policies that make reporting easy and all this rhetoric about believing victims and so on.
Mm-hmm.
And it's also in this article they also talk about this number of false accusations rising quite a bit in recent times. So
Mm-hmm.
it's it's quite possible that all this rhetoric about women never lie about this actually causes more women to lie about this.
Yeah, and it wouldn't be entirely surprising. I mean, this whole rhetoric essentially is like a subsidy, and when you subsidize something, you get more of it. So,
yep.
And in Britain, for instance, they literally do subsidize it. They give £10,000 to the victims of rape, but the threshold is to just file a complaint, and then if the complaint is found to be bullshit, or even worse, the court finds it to be entirely unfunded, you don't get to pay the money back.
What could possibly go wrong?
Yeah, what could possibly go wrong? Okay, now here's one that is very interesting. I don't know, I have my reservation about it, but it's worth discussing. Give healthy gay men game-changing HIV drugs to prevent infection, experts demand. Healthy gay men should be given daily antiviral drugs to prevent them developing HIV, a new study has suggested. The British PROUD study, led by a team of researchers at University College London, advises that pre-exposure prophylaxis, PrEP, should be added to the HIV prevention toolkit for men who have sex with men and are at risk of HIV infection as soon as possible in the UK and elsewhere. In 2012, the Food and Drug Administration in the United States approved a drug for use to prevent HIV infection in men who have sex with men. Published today in The Lancet, the study provides the first evidence that preventative HIV treatment is highly effective in a real-world setting. It showed that pre-exposure to the HIV drug Truvada can reduce the risk of infection in men who have sex with men, MSM, by as much as 86%. Previous research had suggested that preventive treatment might cut HIV infection rates, but it was unclear whether such an approach would work in practice. The new study recruited 545 participants at 13 sexual health clinics in England. They were divided into two groups, one of which was to be given Truvada immediately and the other a year later. Comparing the two made it possible to assess the effectiveness of pre-exposure prophylaxis, PrEP, in men at high risk of HIV infection. Of the 276 men treated straight away, just 3 were infected with HIV over the subsequent year. During the same period, 19 of the men from the deferred group became HIV positive. Speaking earlier this year, Chief Investigator Professor Sheena McCormack from the Medical Research Council's Clinical Trials Unit at UCL said, quote, "These results are extremely exciting and show PrEP is highly effective at preventing HIV infection in the real world. Concerns that PrEP would not work so well in the real world were unfounded. These results show there is a need for PrEP and offer hope for reversing the epidemic among men who have sex with men in this country. The findings we've presented today are going to be invaluable in informing decisions about making PrEP available through the NHS." Dr. Michael Brady, medical director at the Terence Higgins Trust, told Mail Online the charity are campaigning for the game-changing drug to be made available on the NHS. He said PrEP is, quite simply, a game changer. The efficacy of this treatment as an HIV prevention tool is clear. Today's Lancet publication is an essential step towards ensuring access to PrEP for those who need it. We are campaigning for PrEP to be available on the NHS. For this to happen, the treatment needs to be approved by NHS England, and the publication of the impressive PROUD results in a peer-reviewed journal will support this process. Like HIV treatment, the history of HIV prevention has evolved over time. A combination approach to HIV prevention is possible, and we need access to PrEP now. He added, we know that most gay men use condoms most of the time, and that this has prevented tens of thousands of HIV infections since the epidemic began in the UK. However, we also know that condomless sex vastly increases the risk of HIV being transmitted. This research shows just how effective PrEP can be in preventing transmission of the virus in groups at greatest risk, offering another line of defense alongside condoms and regular testing. It is not a vaccine, and it won't be for everyone, but once approved, we expect it to significantly increase the momentum in our fight against the virus. We urge the government, NHS England, and local authorities to make PrEP a key priority in the fight against HIV. The study's authors concluded the impressive reduction of HIV incidence in people taking PrEP without a measurable increase in other sexually transmitted infections is reassuring for the clinical community and public health stakeholders. National health services are under financial constraints, but they cannot afford to ignore the results of PROUD and Hypergay, a similar French study, which strongly support the addition of PrEP to the current standard of prevention for men who have sex with men at risk of HIV infection. And the article goes even longer, but I think we got the gist of it. Am I the only one who is a bit skeptical about this?
I don't know. I know nothing about the science behind this, so I guess I have to take their word for it, because it seems perfectly plausible for me that there could be a drug that would significantly reduce the risk of HIV infection. I don't know. Could be.
Yes, but their how should I put it? Their tenacity towards demanding government funding puts a great question mark to me regarding their motives. I mean, if it's really that good, why not start campaigning privately to convince your target group to start using it?
Yeah, but that's not really how healthcare works in the UK. So.
Yes, it does. I mean, nobody can stop you from buying it from the drugstore.
Yeah,
as far as I know, it's already approved by the FDA. So, in the UK system usually takes what FDA approves. Usually, not always. So getting it into the drugstores is actually quite simple, given this. So why not?
Yeah, I mean, certainly that's possible, but I don't know. Maybe it's a particularly expensive drug. It could be, but
yes.
In any case, if it's not available on the NHS, most British people will probably not get it. So I don't find it suspicious in any way that they are trying to get this approved by the NHS.
Mm-hmm. Maybe, I don't know. It could be indeed. It could be particularly expensive, since HIV drugs are usually expensive, and I know quite a lot about HIV treatment since I used to work with HIV people, HIV positive people between 2002 and 2009, and I remember that for some of them the treatment costed like $11,000 a month. For the most extreme cases. For others it was slightly cheaper, but still quite a lot of money for most people to afford.
Of course, this is also sort of a big opportunity with this drug, because preventing someone from getting HIV also allows you to save a large amount of costs. So maybe this introducing this new drug will actually decrease costs overall. I don't know.
Yeah, that's another argument that they do make in the article, but I cut that part because the original article is really long. Yeah, they do make that argument that if not implemented, for instance, all these new cases would generate another something like 70 million pounds new cost for a year for the NHS, but they don't tell how much this would cost, which is very interesting and strange. I mean, how much would be the cost reduced? And also, more importantly, I understand why they. I mean, some people said that, yeah, but why only gay men? Because straight people also spread the virus. Yes, they do, but gay men spread it the most. I know that's politically incorrect from an LGBTist perspective, but it's the truth. So I understand why only gay men, but how would you force them, or how would you? I don't know. How would you give it? It's not like young gay men are every day at the hospital, or they are young gay men, just like young straight men are usually the category of people that go the least to the hospital anyway.
Yeah, I don't know about forcing anyone. At least as far as I understood it, there's nothing. This article is about forcing people to take this drug. But if it's available and it's available for free, then I guess a lot of people will get it, especially if their doctors recommend it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but then again, given that it's addressed to a category of people that goes the least to the hospital, especially in their youth years, where it's usually the years when they contract the virus anyway, I'm quite skeptical about its effectiveness in the real world, even if the results of those studies are entirely replicable and true and whatnot.
Yeah. One thing which goes to what you said about the higher risk for gay men, what I really found shocking is the numbers that they use there. They had this study with 545 participants, and then in one group 3 were infected with HIV in the course of 1 year, and the other group 19. So among 545 participants in a single year, 22 of them, so about 5%, contracted HIV. That's a huge number.
Yeah, it is.
I mean,
it is.
I don't know whether they use some sort of representative population or whatever, or whether they use some particularly group of gay men that were particularly identified as being at high risk or whatever. But that's just 5% in a single year. That's extremely large.
Yes, it is, and there is an increasing amount of serious discussion, even at such high levels as the WHO. Not that WHO is particularly trustworthy, but whatever. Most people tend to go less berserk when a politically incorrect fact emerges that is acknowledged by the World Health Organization. But it is really true that homosexual men, or men who have sex with other men, really are the group that are at the highest risk of contracting HIV, much higher than straight people or lesbian women, for that matter.
Yeah, among lesbians, it's much lower than among straight people.
Mm-hmm. And among straight people is also much lower than homosexual men. I don't know. There is still a debate on why this is the case. Although, of course, there are also a lot of politically correct groups that deny that this is even the case to begin with, which is nonsense. But I don't know why it is the case. Is gay sex particularly more predisposed to transmitting the virus, or are just gay men are just far more promiscuous than lesbian women and straight people?
I think it is both. Of course,
Probably both.
Anal sex, you get a lot of sort of small injuries there, where you can easily contract all sorts of diseases. So that's also, of course, there's this whole matter of fecal matter and so on, which if you clean yourself before that meticulously, you can significantly reduce that risk. But a lot of people don't do that, so there's always just a much higher chance of contracting all sorts of diseases, not just HIV.
Yeah, whatever. In my opinion, if they're correct, they should try it, for the simple reason that it's about time to start curbing the HIV infection even further. Although, to be fair, and again, I know this from direct observance, things have gotten a lot better. I mean, I know a woman who has been infected with HIV in '94. In '94, 70% of Europe didn't even know that HIV exists, and the ARVs, which are the most effective drugs against HIV, had not been invented yet. So a diagnosis of HIV in '94 was like, you're going to be dead in 1 year, tops. Nowadays, on the other hand, most people who do contract HIV actually do get a chance to lead a normal life and have an almost identical life expectancy with a non-HIV person, with a seronegative person. But still, it would be nice if we'd get extra layers of protections anyway.
Yeah, and it's also just really, really expensive, as you already said. In addition to that, it does significantly reduce your life quality, because even with all these new drugs, it's still you're still at a much higher risk of contracting all sorts of other diseases because of your weakened immune system. So it's still a very challenging living with HIV, even though it's gotten a lot better in the last 20 years or so.
Yes, absolutely. Okay, let's go to the next one.
Okay, this one is from Germany, from Welt.de. Serious allegations against Alice Schwarzer by former lover. Alice Schwarzer, the icon of the German women's movement, has always been tight-lipped about her love life. In her 2011 autobiography, Lebenslauf, she revealed that she lives with a woman. But that's basically all that's known about her partner. Now, a former partner speaks up and raises serious allegations against the feminists. Waltraud Schade claims to have been Schwarzer's lover in 1972 and 1973. She has written a book, Tango mit Alice, or Tango with Alice, which is due to be released this month. Bild am Sonntag has published citations from an advanced copy. Schade had gotten to know the then 29-year-old Schwarzer at a women's group meeting in Munich. The two had become a couple and had traveled through Germany and to the Côte d'Azur. What might seem romantic at first glance had often been difficult. For example, allegedly Schwarzer sometimes got angry when Schade didn't want to have sex. She describes a scene in which Schwarzer had, quote-unquote, ostentatiously left the bed. Quote, "You storm out of the room, slamming the door. Suddenly, loud noises. In your fury, you threw down all the cast iron skillets." End quote. Alice Schwarzer is even supposed to have thrown a piece of soap at her girlfriend. Quote, "You justify your tantrum with your temperament." End quote. Schwarzer was a well-known women's rights activist even back then. In 1971, when she lived in France, she had been one of the founders of the French women's movement and brought an originally French campaign to Germany. Stern printed a cover story reminiscent of the Nouvel Observateur, in which 300 women publicly admitted to having had an abortion. At the end of that year, Schwarzer wrote a book about and against paragraph 218, which prohibited abortion. The feminist icon was born. At the time she first met Waltraud Schade, Schwarzer was living with a male ethnographer who had tolerated the parallel relationship, Schade writes. Schwarzer had lived with a man, but spent her holidays alternately with her and with him. Quote, "The first half you want to spend with Bruno, the second with me. You think you know how much you ask of me, but do you really know it?" Schade writes. Through her office, Schwarzer told Bild am Sonntag that she was surprised that, quote, "such trifling and private matters," unquote, were in any way relevant to the public. Why does Schade speak publicly about this now? She told the paper with the publication of Schwarzer's autobiography she no longer felt it necessary for her to remain silent. Quote, "I was surprised that she portrays herself in her biography in a way that I never experienced. In my opinion, Alice Schwarzer did not behave in our relationship according to the feminist principles she has represented for 40 years. End of quote and end of article. So,
it is a fair question. Why now?
Yeah, exactly. So this is the kind of accusation that ordinarily I wouldn't pay or wouldn't really give much credence to, and it's a sort of also the allegations are not really all that bad. Like she got angry and she like once threw a piece of soap at her. That's not exactly the most shocking revelations. But the reason I bring this piece of news up at all is specifically because it is Anissa Schwarzhand, because and basically because of her hypocrisy. You know, she talks about that such trifling and private matters shouldn't be brought up in public, but that is exactly the kind of thing she brought up with various other people who, you know, dragging them in through the mud with completely unproven allegations about very private matters. And you know, the whole feminist slogan or the leftist slogan that the private is political,
The
or the
personal
personal
is
is
political.
political. Sorry. And here she says exactly the opposite. That yeah, this is personal, so why should it be brought up? And that's really the only reason I brought up this piece of news. Whether these allegations are true, I have no idea. I could well imagine it, but who knows?
Yeah, but as you said, even if they are true, they're not particularly shocking. I mean, in 40 years, she got mad once and threw a tantrum. Come on, so what?
No, they were together just I think 2 years, from 1972 to 1973.
Okay, in 2 years, someone can get mad once. I mean, if she had gotten mad and threw tantrums 3 times a day, now that would be shocking and special. But it happened once in 2 years. Well, people sometimes get annoyed. We can't all the time be calm and reasonable. Yeah, we sometimes get unreasonable a few times over our lifetimes or once in 2 years. Come on. It's not really that special.
Though, of course, this is the sort of action that probably at least Schwarzer would classify that as domestic violence, at
Yes,
least if it had been committed by a man against a woman.
probably yes. Yes, and that pretty much shows a bit of her hypocrisy. Isn't this the same woman that was doing tax evasion and
Yeah,
was
yeah,
caught doing
that's
so? You wrote an article about her a while ago.
yes, exactly.
Yeah, so tax evasion, domestic violence, not bad, not bad. Not bad.
Yeah, also all sorts of misappropriations of public funds for some sort of pet project of her, which she um, invested in, let's say, questionable channels where there's no real records of what she used the money for, and so on. That's a lot of shady business going on there.
Not bad, not bad. Something that I've come to expect from ideologues. And I say ideologues and not necessarily feminists because these kinds of allegations have surfaced lately also about former communists, especially top-notch communists. As time went on, a lot of these things have surfaced too. So yeah, I'm not surprised at all.
Yeah, and it's not necessarily that that people with these sort of influential positions are especially wicked or something. That might also be the case. It's more that they have the opportunity to engage in some sort of large-scale fraud and embezzlement and all sorts of other things, whereas normal people don't really get the opportunity to get a million here or there and spend it on whatever they want to.
Which is why power needs to be dissipated as much as possible and have as few people as possible in these kinds of influential positions to begin with. But then again, that's a different argument. Let's skip to the next one.
Okay, this one is from Austria, from Der Standard. Green brouhaha over red lipstick kisses in Vienna. Somehow the whole matter does seem to be quote unquote totally embarrassing unquote to the youth spokesman of the Greens. He'd been in meetings the whole day and didn't have time for a telephone interview, the parliamentary office of the Greens said on Tuesday. Only late in the afternoon could he react to the accusations. The young Green delegate is, roughly speaking, accused of sexism, or, on a different interpretation, might even himself be a victim of sexism. The bizarre situation isn't quite clear yet. On an election poster of the Greens, Schmidt was shown with his face covered with red lipstick kisses, captioned with "Ich bin Öffi für alles," which is sort of tricky to translate. On the one hand, it sort of means I am open to everything or to anything, and apparently Öffi in Austria is also a sort of a shortened version of public transportation, short for öffentliche Verkehrsmittel. So ich bin Öffi für alles. The Neo suspected sexism in this poster and submitted a complaint. And the Neos are a liberal party in Austria. The advertisement watch group, which is coordinated by the women's department of the city of Vienna, agrees with the Neos. The poster is quote-unquote sexist. The examiners reached the conclusion that the smiling man with the slogan "Ich bin Öffi für alles" suggests that he is, quote, open to sexual adventures, end quote. This means, quote, a sexualization of the man, unquote. Further on in the verdict, quote, in parallel to the degradation of the degradation and the accompanying objectification, there's a tongue-in-cheek attempt to elevate this man in accordance with stereotypical gender roles. Man is cast as being potent and polyamorous, end quote. The ad played with, quote, heteronormative cliches, but the man was, quote, only open in one direction. What's missing apparently are male kisses on the cheek. The use of these lipstick lips recalled connections to femininity. The watch group's verdict, quote, thus there's an exclusion of non-heterosexual relationships, end quote. Schmidt seems at least outwardly amused. Quote, I think we need a little bit of fun in politics. With this poster, we succeeded in getting attention for public transportation. That's awesome, isn't it?
Can it get more pathetic than this? I mean, seriously?
Actually, I think this watch group is very queer-phobic and because they automatically assume that these lip imprints on his cheek are female. Why? That's just, men can also wear red lipstick, and also gender non-conforming people can wear red lipstick. So how do they know that it's heterosexual?
Yeah,
That's
it could be travestites or trannies.
Clearly a heterosexist assumption.
Yeah, sure, that lipstick can come from travestites or trannies, so why not? Jesus Christ. I think that the Liberal Party is just trying to out-feminist the feminists in here. It seems like that, or is their Liberal Party a leftist one or a more centrist one? Because
no, it's sort of it is a classically Liberal Party as far as I know. I don't know if they actually believe this to be sexist. Probably they're just trying to stick it to their political opponents. I don't know.
Yeah, but it's still pathetic. I mean, if they don't believe it and they're trying to troll them, it's weak bait, low quality bait, as we would call it in some other less civilized forums. And if they do believe it, it's utterly pathetic. I mean, come on, seriously? Jesus Christ. Why? And I don't know about the public transport. Maybe they're right with that issue. Maybe they're wrong. I don't care. But no. It's just low quality bait.
Yeah, this is completely ridiculous. This sort of line of argument there that they're using here. It's like, so displaying a man who has I mean, displaying a man who has this sort of lipstick on his cheeks. How do you know that it's just polyamory? Maybe that's just maybe just the same woman kissing him more than once. I don't know. And that he's being degraded by being shown like this. It's
Yeah, how is this being degrading if he's smiling and he's been doing that poster, consensual? And even if it were degrading, let's assume it were degrading, so fucking what? Why is this the business of another political party?
yeah. I mean, this is. I mean, it's not like he's just some model who you could say this is being exploited using some sort of Marxist logic maybe, but he's a politician. He is responsible for this poster. It's he who wants to be portrayed in this way. I mean. Even if some people believe it is degrading, he clearly doesn't believe it. Otherwise, he wouldn't have put that poster up. And the only one who is possibly being hurt by this is himself, and it just seems quite insane.
Yeah, and meanwhile, in the neighboring Italy, a right-wing party won seats using porn stars. So yeah, I mean, really, come on. And this guy can't get some conversation going because they're not even sure yet. Either he's a victim of sexism or he is sexist.
Probably both.
Probably both, or probably none of them, I would say. I think those who whine about sexism in this issue are just being extremely silly. And that's too bad because they're making me defend the Green Party, which I would never do under normal circumstances. But in this case, come on.
Yeah, it is.
That moment when the Greens are reasonable.
It definitely is from the silly place.
Yep.
Let's move on to another silly place, to The Guardian.
Yep.
Not all comments are created equal. The case for ending online comments by Jessica Valenci, our old friend. It shouldn't be a surprise that I'm not fond of comment sections. I think it'd be hard-pressed to find many female writers who are. On most sites, from YouTube to local newspapers, comments are a place where the most noxious thoughts rise to the top, and smart conversations are lost in a sea of garbage. There's a reason, after all, that the refrain, "don't read the comments," has become ubiquitous among journalists. But if we're not to read them, why have them at all? I wasn't always a commentator. When I started a feminist blog in 2004, I was thrilled to finally be able to talk with other young feminists online and was open to chatting with detractors. I saw the comment sections as a way to destabilize the traditional writer-reader relationship. No longer did audiences need to consume an article without a true opportunity to respond. Comments even made my writing better these days. Feedback from readers broadened the way I thought and sometimes changed my mind. But as the internet and audiences grew, so did the bile. Now it feels as if comments uphold power structures instead of subverting them. Sexism, racism, and homophobia are the norm. Threats and harassment are common. That's not even counting social media. For writers, wading into comments doesn't make a lot of sense. It's like working a second shift where you're willingly subject to attacks from people you have never met and hopefully never will, especially if you're a woman. As Laurie Penny has written, quote, "An opinion, it seems, is the short skirt of the internet. Having one and flaunting it is somehow asking an amorphous mass of almost entirely male keyboard bashers to tell you how they'd like to rape, kill, and urinate on you. The problem is so bad that online harassment is a keynote subject this year at the Online News Association conference. My own exhaustion with comments these days has less to do with explicit harassment, which at places like The Guardian is swiftly taken care of. Thank you, moderators. Rather, it is the never-ending stream of derision that women, people of color, and other marginalized communities endure. The constant insistence that you or what you write is stupid or that your platform is undeserved. Yes, I'm sure straight, white male writers get this kind of response too, but it's not nearly as often and not nearly as nasty. I don't much understand the appeal of comments for readers either. outside of the few places that have rich and intelligent conversations and comments, what is the point of engaging in debate where the best you can hope for are a few pats on the back from strangers for that pithy one-liner? Isn't that what a Facebook or Twitter is for? Seriously, when tech news websites Recode shut down its comment section last year, editors cited the growth of social media as one reason for the decision. Quote, "The bulk of discussion of our stories is increasingly taking place there, making on-site comments less and less used and less useful." End quote. Comment sections also give the impression that all thoughts are created equal, when, well, they're not. When Popular Science stopped publishing comments, for example, it was because, quote, "everything from evolution to the origins of climate change is mistakenly up for grabs again. Scientific certainty is just another thing for two people to debate." End quote. When will we see the humanity and dignity of women as a fact rather than an opinion? It's true, I could just stop reading comments, but I shouldn't have to. Ignoring hateful things doesn't make them go away, and telling women to simply avoid comments is just another way of saying we're too lazy or overwhelmed to fix the real problem. Websites and news sources are increasingly moving forward without comments because they find them unnecessary and counterproductive. In my perfect world, more places would follow their lead, at least until publishers find lasting solutions to making comments worth it. Worth it for readers and for writers, because the nastiness on our doorstep has piled too high for too long. They just want to get out of the house.
Yeah. Funny part, Jessica Valenti's articles are usually amongst the few articles on The Guardian that actually